Allison, I just finished my book and was wondering if there's time today or tomorrow to do a book talk.
I'm so glad you asked. Yes, right now would be good, but I can't always do it immediately. But if we make an appointment, we can make it happen.
My teacher knows I'm here. I have a pass. Is it all right that I took some notes and brought notes with me?
You're more than welcome to make notes. Did you get the ideas for those notes from the stuff on the rubric? I read the rubric
and I realized what I needed to get a 4 because I'm shooting for a 4 today.
Good. Okay. All right. Well, I tell you what. Says here, the first thing I'm going to ask you about is the plot, and then I'm going to ask you about the setting and the characters, and then the author, and then I'd like you to tell me about themes. So why don't we start out you telling me about the plot, what happens in the book?
I read the book My Side of the Mountain by Jean Craighead George, and it's about a boy who's probably middle school age who runs away from home, not because he's upset about home, but he wants this challenge in his life to become independent by going to an old family farm and living off the land, and that's in fact what he does. He runs away from New York City, goes out to the Catskill Mountains, and he finds his great-grandfather's farm, finds a huge tree, hollows it out, creates a little home, spends most of his day hunting for food. Along the way, he makes some friends, people who stumble along his camp or people who are searching for him. But most of his day is about observing nature, collecting food, being happy eating what he's eating, and training his falcon. The story ends when his family shows up. They've heard rumors about a boy living in the woods, and his mother, his father, and I think 8 siblings show up to live in the woods with him.
Wow, they must think that living in the woods is a pretty fun thing there. But tell me, why do you think that instead of just going and finding the farm and then going back home, why do you think he stays out there?
He makes a personal challenge to himself that he can do it. He can live through a winter on this farm. He can find his own food, make his own clothes, build his own house, and do it with very little supplies from the outside world.
Okay. Now, what would you say the setting of the story is? Where and when does it take place?
It's a mountainous place in the Catskill Mountains. The book, this story could take place in any day in any age, but I think it was written about 50 years ago. There are a few clues in the books when he goes into town. There are a few clues that this isn't in the most modern world.
Okay, and who's the author?
Jean Craighead George.
All right, good. Now, let's talk about themes. What can you tell me about themes or main ideas going through this book? What stood out for you?
I thought about many. Independence, coming of age, dependence on animals rather than people, but I made a sentence. Being observant and watchful and being ready to take opportunity will help you survive, and I have some evidence.
Good, because you're going to need that evidence in your book review. So what are some instances in the book that back up that theme?
Very early in the beginning on page 25, he's very hungry because he hasn't brought much food with him, and his intention is to live off the land. He decides if he watches birds and animals, he can see what is edible, that if it doesn't poison them, it won't poison him.
Okay.
And he decides that a raccoon would be the best thing to watch because raccoons have the same kind of eating habits as people. And in fact, the raccoon goes to this riverbank, digs up some mussels, and he just watches the raccoon eat the mussels, and then the raccoon gets full, and he eats the rest of the mussels. He took that opportunity.
Okay.
I saw another evidence on page 42. Mm-hmm. You can see here, this is a falcon called Frightful. Mm-hmm. One day he's looking up, and he sees these falcons flying across the valley. He follows them and finds their nest, and he takes one of the nestlings, and he raises up the bird to be a hunter. So he observed the falcons, and then he decided, I'm going to take one and make it my hunter.
Good, so that's 2 examples. Do you
I have
one more for me?
Yes. He would get his deer from hunters. He himself didn't have weapons. The first time he hears a shot in the valley, he realizes a poacher is about because it's not hunting season. He has been observant, so he knows that the person's about 4 minutes away from the gunshot. The deer comes crashing through a clearing, and he decides to take his opportunity. When the deer collapses, he pulls it into the bush, and he thinks this poacher won't be observant enough to figure out where his deer is. So he's set up with clothing and food for the fall.
Well, that's great. So you've given me my themes, my plot, my setting, my characters. You're at a 3 right now, unless there's something else you'd like to tell me about.
I could talk to you about the author, but I thought it'd be more interesting. I was so inspired by this book that I went out on my boat with friends. I didn't do it alone, and I got some bull kelp, and I made pickles. In the book, he makes blueberry jam with a gift of sugar, but he and the person who gave him the sugar make their own jars out of clay. Oh. I bought my jars, I bought my sugar, but I collected the bull kelp, and I made these pickles. Would you like to try one?
I'd love to try one of these. These look fantastic. So just like Sam Gribley, you found something from the environment around you.
Yes.
And figured out a way to turn it into food.
Yes, and I realized what Sam did, we could do here. We could live off the land. Do you like those pickles?
Those are very, very good. I would be encouraged to live off the land. Well, Miss Sagel, you've given me the plot, the setting, the characters. You gave me extra information. You knew the author. You had the theme. You had the 3 examples for your theme. I'm going to give you a 4, Miss Sagel. Well done.
Why, thank you. I'm looking forward to my next book.
Okay.